Well, I guess you were a child of the 50s and 60s. How do you remember your early years, growing up in the popular culture and all that social turmoil and stuff that was going on there?
Well, I grew up in eastern Tennessee, so the social turmoil didn't really touch us in the sense that it did in cities. So it was on TV. When I went to college, it may have eked into there a little, but not very much. So I didn't directly identify with the turmoil that was going on.
But presumably you saw the beginnings of the hippies and all that.
Yes, I did. And well, it looked free, unrestrained, fun, all the things that a person might like. In other words, you could have your way. So that was attractive.
But do you think in any way that hippiedom and all of that led in some way to Charles Manson?
I think it had its contributing factors. Loose morality, drugs, giving up personal responsibility, all kinds of things like that.
Would you say Charles Manson was a hippie?
No. Not in the... Well, it depends on how you define hippie. But if you define hippie as somebody with... Well, let's take it in its most benign form. Not that at all.
So what do you think made Manson attractive to young people?
Well, he seemed to have a easily understood, attractive solution to the psychological moral vacuum in certain people. Not everybody, just certain people. And so he was perceived as a source of supply, or what you thought you needed. So that was the attraction.
How did you meet him?
I met him through another party. They took me to his house. And he was sitting out in the backyard, smoking grass and entertaining several girls. They were all sitting around. I think he was in an old bathtub full of water, having a bath. And they were giving him a bath, and everybody was getting high. And it looked very nice. It looked like Elysian Fields and things,
Where was that?
It was in Topanga Canyon.
He said he'd mentioned you when I spoke to him. He said he'd met you in Washington. Yeah.
No,
I look at state. I don't know.
No.
Okay.
That he's confused.
Right. How would you characterize him now?
Well, how do I characterize him? Well, let's see. I would say that he's a very confused, deceived, and lost person.
Evil.
I'd say he is an instrument of evil, and as much as a human being can identify with evil, he would be willing to identify that with that to satisfy his own goals.
Would you use a word like satanic?
Well, that's the source of, that's the spirit that drives him.
Do you recall him, where you collectively, were there any sort of satanic influences at the time, or ritual or anything like that?
No, not in the form of formal ritual, or even not really in a mockery. No, not really ritual, but the idea of the devil, the evil genius. Okay, that was how do you say, kind of romanticized in the family. It was sort of a caricature. It was kind of played off like an excuse. but not really real, not really real.
Because when you say you met him in Topanga Canyon, was that what they called the spiral staircase?
You know, I think there was a place there called the Spiral Staircase, but I don't remember where that was. I've never been there.
Quite recently, Patricia Krenwinkel mentioned him being there, and Robert de Grimston, who was who ran a satanic church at the time, was there. And she said, it was an amazing thing to hear her. She said that she remembered de Grimston being there, and she said that they thought he was a bad influence on Charlie because he was a Satanist. Do you remember him at all?
No, not by name. I don't recognize the name.
He ran an outfit called The Process.
Okay, I've heard the name. I thought The Process was somehow connected with Scientology or something.
It was a mixture of Scientology and Satanism.
An apt combination.
Well, you know, L. Ron Hubbard started out in Satanism.
Well, you know, he died right here.
Yeah?
He was in San Luis County. That's where he died.
Yeah. Hubbard started off as the magical assistant to a guy called Parsons in Pasadena who worked for Aleister Crowley, the Satanist.
Well,
And
I didn't know that.
Hubbard ran off with his girlfriend, and Parsons blew himself up.
Oh, Mary Sue, was that? Or was that earlier?
No.
That was, he married her later.
No. Parsons blew his own place sky high.
My goodness.
Because of it. But it was weird because Parsons was one of the founders of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
My goodness.
And when the Tate LaBianca killings happened and Manson people got involved, they were very worried because Squeaky Fromm's father worked at Jet Propulsion.
I knew that I didn't know the specific connection, but I knew there was something about somebody's family was in the defense
That's what it was.
Pittman.
Nancy?
Yeah. Wasn't her dad in something like that? What did he do?
I don't.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure. That's I'm just not good on those facts.
How important was music in the life?
Well, it was pretty important. It was pretty important. It was sort of a how do you say? It was part of the brainwashing. You get to say the most outrageous things in music that would otherwise be scoffed at, but it's amazing how you start to conform to the idea that the music is putting out when it's done in music. It's not really surprising, but it's true.
I guess I have to ask, were the Beatles particularly important?
Well, they used to make a lot of the Beatles' White Album, okay, and it was sort of a coincidence to everybody, I think. I think, you know, Charlie would talk about the importance of the particular lyrics, and everybody goes, yeah, Charlie, yeah, sure. But not being patronizing, of course. Oh, yes, Charlie, that's very profound, you know, like that. Nobody would, I'd almost say, dare, play lightly, because that wasn't part of the thing. But I'll tell you that the piece of the Beatle music that really that seemed to manifest with us, and we used to. Well, we didn't sing the song, but it was known. It says, "Turn off your mind, relax, and float downstream. There is no dying." And if you were to tell somebody that in a serious conversation, they would tell you you're crazy. But when you give it to them in the context of music and that in music, then you hear it enough, and you begin to think, yeah, I can do that.
Were you a musician yourself?
Not then.
You are now?
Yeah, a little.
What do you do?
I play guitar.
Sing?
Yeah.
Well, one of these questions that one has to ask again. How do you now feel about the events that brought you here?
I feel very sad about those events. It's hard to describe how bad I feel. It's terrible. People lost their lives. Other people's lives were ruined. Everybody experienced the destruction at some level or another. Irreparable harm was done uselessly. And I feel terrible. There's just, part of it's the hopelessness of ever being able to change what happened. There's just no way to make it right. So that's part of the whole feeling.
How do you remember Gary Hinman? Do you think of him?
Gary was a real nice guy. He really was. Real hospitable, forthcoming, generous, nice guy. He's a music teacher.
Friend of a friend of mine.
Yeah, Severin. Well,
Dennis Wilson. I knew Dennis Wilson.
You knew Dennis? I knew Dennis. Tragic. I hate to see Dennis die. Of all those guys, Dennis had soul, man. The rest of them aren't bad. I don't know, but he was maybe he was just crazy like I was, and I thought he was cool. I don't know. But anyway, Gary. This is Dennis Wilson, the Beach Boys.
That's right.
Did he know Gary Hinman?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, he did.
I never knew that. Anyway, Gary was just a nice guy, and it's terrible. And the bad part for me is that, I betrayed him in a serious way. Not that, just by going along with what happened and not protecting him when I could have. That's what I think about.
Well, strangely enough, and as I'm saying, it's a wild paradox, but you're obviously a very happy man. I can see that. At least you're a very changed man indeed. I mean, I'll tell you my own input on that. A couple of nights ago, we had to go through a lot of library footage, and some of the stuff I looked at included the footage of you actually arriving when you gave yourself in. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
December 2nd, something, 69.
70.
You're 70. You look very different.
Oh, I know I am. A lot different.
What do you think's changed?
Well, Jesus Christ is the changer in my life. And he's changed my outlook, my future, my present, my relationships, my view of my relationships, my view of myself, everything that's important.
I was going to say, when did he come into your life? A better question is, when did you realize he was there?
1974, about 4 years after the arrest. I was in Folsom. And I was standing on the yard one day, getting a drink of water. And a voice spoke in my mind. It was God, I didn't know it. And it says, look at the yard, what do you see? And I looked at the yard, and I could see all these dead guys. Everybody I knew. But I could see the death in their life. And it really scared me. And I started talking to this voice, and I said, I don't like this. And the voice says, well, this is the best you can do. And I said, oh no, there's been a big misunderstanding. And I tried to have an argument with it, but it was so normative when it spoke that it was just explaining reality rather than making a suggestion. This was not a suggestion, this was just real. And I looked at that and I go, well, there's been a big mistake. And it was almost as if he said, yeah, and you made it, But it wasn't humorous, I'll tell you. But I looked at this and I said, God, I don't like what's happening. And I began to feel really hopeless. All of a sudden, it just turned the light on that, there's no way out. I'm in serious trouble. And that's the first time I really got real with, I am in serious. I mean, I'd heard the jury say guilty. Man, I heard all the charges, and I knew all that. And I'd been 4 years from the beginning to where I was. But this was when I said, God, I need help.
Because I remember on this footage when you're arriving at the courthouse, someone says to you, you're going to be charged with murder, and you said, is that all? And you didn't look terribly connected with what was happening to you at the time. I mean, can you even remember that event?
Yeah, I remember it. I don't remember saying that exactly. Yeah. But I remember saying something just quip off the, was that all? Like, I'm even badder than you think, sort of impression. or you don't even know the half of it, or I'm smart and you're not, kind of idea.
I'm going to shock you now. I'll tell you, you looked evil.
Well, I'm sure I was acting it.
You did. You looked creepy that day.
Yeah. I was loaded on LSD that day. Whether that has any, I'm sure that has something to do with it. I mean, you get into that stuff, man. You're open to a lot.
Because do you remember you had, what was her name, Kathy Gillis was standing on when someone asked you a question, you were turning to her, and she would nod, or she was obviously telling you whether or not you could answer any questions. It was very strange. But you don't look like that now.
No, I sure don't. Thank goodness. Thank God I don't look like that.
But was it worth coming through all what you've been through to get to what you are now?
Wow. That's a hard question. When you count up the human cost, from that perspective, it's hard to justify. As far as what happened to other people, is my being involved in the murder of two people a fair price to pay for what I got? Sure wasn't to those two. All right, sure wasn't to them. And there would have been, I could have got here an easier way, I'm sure. But being a fool, I insisted on the hard way, and I messed up a lot of things on the way.
Do you have other things in your life now? You have a wife, daughter.
That's right. Well, aside from the Lord, that's the best thing that ever happened to me, my wife.
Tell us about that. How did you come to meet?
She just came to me. I mean, you can't find women like this. You got to wait for them. And I was teaching a class in the chapel, and one of my students brought a letter in that she had written because she was connected to a prison ministry that he had written to. And I read her letter, and I said, well, I asked him, I said, are you going to talk to this person? And he said no, and he gave me the letter, and so I said, well, I'll talk to her. So I started writing. We started writing. And it was very amazing how everything fell together. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, that's figuratively speaking, of course. But we met April the 11th, 1984, and we were married a year later. A year and a week later. And 85. And it's been the best part of my whole life. In some ways, it has for her, but it's been really difficult for her. I mean, she's had to face reality out there, and I've just had to be in prison, which is far different. So she's, I'm sure God put us together, because no person could have stood this had that not been the case.
And you have a daughter now?
And we have a daughter, Taylor. She'll be 6 months old in a few days. Changed my life.
Do you fear for her growing up, though? I mean, I'm going to put it in a very ugly way. I'm going to say, would you be afraid of her growing up and meeting people like you as you were?
Definitely. Hey, I'll tell you what. I wouldn't change places with her. I don't envy her future in this society, and in the things she's going to have to deal with, and the things she's going to have to do. Hey, she's going to have it's a chancy world out there, more so than ever, and getting very dicey.
Do you think the Manson business has had an effect on society that's going to be detectable in her lifetime?
I don't know. I tend to think not, because I think she will be able to handle the information she gets about it in the right way. So while it will have an effect, of course, I don't think it'll have a gross adverse effect. She'll have to deal with it. It's going to be a problem at some time in her life, because somebody's going to say, your dad was one of those Manson killers, okay? And she's going to have to deal with it. And she'll go, not my daddy, because she don't know that person.
Because Mansonism has anything but disappeared. still out there. In fact, it's probably bigger now than it ever was in 1969.
Well, you know, things like that, they always grow with time. And the less reality about something that is really known, the bigger they're apt to get. Because they seem to have succinct answers. Very plain, very straightforward, easy to understand answers.
I mean, there are, when I last counted, 85 rock bands in Europe playing Manson's music. What do you think of that?
Very sad. If they're playing it as knowing what they're doing, I'd say that. Do they know what they're doing? Do they know what they're saying? And if they're choosing that, I shudder to think. I mean, see, they're ignorant. They don't know what they're doing. If they could look at my life, if they could look at Charles Watson, if they could look at
White supremacy, helter skelter.
Well, you know, the really sad part about it is Manson doesn't really believe that. He just uses that. You know, he doesn't believe that stuff. He's not stupid.
Try telling them that. No?
Well, I mean, he's possessed. No doubt.
Well,
He's deceived, but buddy, he's not stupid. He knows.
Well, there's even a Manson political party now, an outfit called Universal Order, which was founded as a splinter group of the American Nazi Party. Was that always an element of things? Did he ever talk about Hitler and?
Well, let's see. He said that Hitler balanced the karma of the Jews. Now, whatever that means. Of course, that could mean anything you like it to mean, I suppose. But that was something that he said. And so you can take that any way you want. And people did, and they're taking it quite favorably, I hear, if what you say is true.
I can quote you simply because I can't forget it. One of the leaders of this party, a man called James Mason, he wrote a piece about the murders. And the very last line of it is unforgettable. It simply was, and as for the fetus that Sharon Tate was carrying, well, it was a Jew.
Well, I'll tell you. See, that reveals the satanic side of this thing. You know, that reveals the very satanic, because you know it's always been the goal of Satan to wipe out the Jews because of the Messiah. And it's a very big, that's the program. You know, how's he going to be the pretender if the real thing shows? And the anti-Jewish thing, because nothing else can explain it. Nothing can explain it, historically.
I'm almost asking you to repeat yourself now, but this is actually very important to me. What is your message to the young people who are listening to these bands, following this party, buying the books, buying the photographs, putting up the posters?
Don't make the same mistake I made. Think for yourself. It's hard. It's not part of your makeup, probably. You better start making it part of your makeup if you value your life. Because if you continue the way you're going, you're looking at destruction of yourself on any level you expose yourself at, and to anybody else in your sphere of influence. You're bringing yourself a lot of trouble. I know it sounds like it feels good. It seems simple, like it's the right answer. You've got to get rid of these bad elements to make everything right. But you cannot enforce utopia. Can't be done. And we've had 70 years of communism to prove that. We had the Nazi regime to prove that. We've had everybody in the history to prove that. And this is just another thing that we've got to wake up and look around. And I'm sorry for the young people who are disenfranchised, who have a moral vacuum, who come from broken homes, who need guidance and help. We all did. But I'll tell you what, this is the wrong place to get it. This is the wrong place to get it. You have to have something to fill the spiritual vacuum. Manson is the opposite. It is the wrong answer. If you don't turn from that, you'll get caught up in it. And if you don't lose your life, you can ruin your life, of yours and other people. And you can't understand the kind of pain you're going to deal with in the future as a result of what seems like okay now. So,
well, let's talk about your future. You obviously hope to get parole at some stage.
yeah, I'll get paroled.
What are you going to do?
Well, the short answer is I don't know. I have a lot of job offers. I have several things I could do. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm obviously going to be a father. I'm going to be a husband. I'm going to be a law-abiding, self-respecting citizen, et cetera, et cetera. That's for sure. Exactly what I'm going to do, I'm just not, I have no way of knowing.
Because in your parole hearing, you said that you were interested in doing missionary work in Ireland.
We were offered, there was an offer made to do missionary work in Ireland. And I think it's among the good choices I could make. I don't know. I'm open to it. And I believe that one day something like that very well could happen.
Where in Ireland?
Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland and the Six Counties.
Yeah, in Belfast. That's where the people were that we were in touch with.
As this is for a British program, I mean, you tell us about, you've been to Britain before, haven't you?
Yes, for a short period.
It was 68.
68, November of 68 till about April of 69.
Where'd you go? Were you just in London?
London, East Grinstead. That was really in England. Between those two on the train.
East Grinstead is the Vatican of Scientology.
Yeah, that sure was. I was involved in it. And I was at St. Hill and worked there and went through some processing. And it was a great party. I mean, when I was there, it was just party time. And I wasn't really in touch with the spooky side of this, although it had its effect on me. I just didn't. I thought it was rather benign.
Because you shared that with Charlie, didn't you? He was interested in it. He told me anyway, he did Dianetics in prison in the 50s.
Yeah.
When the book came out.
Yeah.
He said they used it in prison because it was a good counterbalance to the black Muslims or something. The black prisoners were doing all that, so it sounds like...
Well, that sounds like somebody'd say, I suppose.
What's your view of Scientology now?
Well, Scientology is classic Eastern mysticism in a Western package. It offers you spirituality without accountability, which is pretty tempting. And so I'm sure that, hey, we all want control, but we don't want to pay the piper either.
Did you go clear?
No.
You didn't go. Couldn't afford it, I guess.
Well, I was getting I got all my so-called processing. It was free because I worked there. But I don't know. It was it's far out stuff. In other words, it had a lot of allurement into but it has a great evil at its root.
Because I saw a letter that Charlie wrote to someone quite recently where he said that he was going to be able to walk through walls and grow new teeth. And that's Scientology, and that's operating feet and stuff. And up at the real loony end of it.
Yeah?
You never came into contact with that. Did you ever see
Walking
that?
through walls?
Well, no, I'm sure you never saw it, but did you ever meet people who thought they might be able to? Did you ever think that if you kept up with it, you'd be able to walk through walls?
No, I'm afraid I never got that far. But I did hear of, because they had an idea called the Sea Org, and you had to sign a contract for 1 billion years. And at this time they were down in Corfu, Greece, and we used to talk to people who had been involved in it, and now can you imagine people old enough to be grown, sitting around seriously discussing the kind of issues of being able to transport your body, like Scotty and Star Trek, okay, like that. I mean, oh yeah, we'll be able to do that. Well, it's just step 3, 4, blah, blah, blah. We've got, Ron's got it all mapped out. Don't worry about a thing.
Let me tell you something you'll find funny. I was walking through the Scientology area in Hollywood, where they've got this huge headquarters there, and I walked past a sign which was for applications for the Seahawk. And it said, "This way for applications," and then it said on it, in quotation marks, "Many are called, but few are chosen, L. Ron Hubbard."
Yeah.
I thought, didn't someone else say that before?
Well, not that L. Ron Hubbard would have caught to him. I mean, he wanted to be God. When you want to be God, you can take advantage of a lot of things.
Well, finally, looking back, I mean, but did you say you can see God's purpose working through your whole life?
Oh yeah.
And what I'm saying is, when you've come further on a much darker path than most of us would even think of.
I see the hand of God in my life from the very beginning of when I was a baby. I know of instances where I was healed, and nobody was religious in my family. Well, not my immediate family, but God healed me of a hernia when I was real small. Then later I had an aneurysm in the internal carotid artery, and they said nobody's ever lived past this ever 6 months after the operation. And as God would have it, the surgeon had a dream the night before the operation and showed him a radical new way to do the operation. He did it that way, and I'm still alive. And they still can't believe it. It was done at Ochsner Clinic in New Orleans, and it was written up in about 1952. And so I see the hand of God in my life. I didn't know it, all right. And even when I turned myself in, all of a sudden I was away. I knew that they'd never catch me unless I let them, or I felt that, and it was true up to that point. But my life became miserable. Now here I'm out sitting out by the hot springs with 2 beautiful young girls, a bunch of hash, and I can't have fun. What is wrong with my life? And I just didn't. And even when I turned myself, I couldn't believe I was doing it. And so when I showed up at the courthouse and they said, "Why are you turning yourself in?" Well, I must have said something stupid because I had no idea why I was turning myself in. And I certainly, of course, I couldn't cop to stupidity at that point. So I had to say something to. But no, my aunts were praying for me to turn myself in. Can you believe that? I can now, but oh boy. And so God has been in my life. I'm sure He wanted me I'm sure He wanted me to be a prison minister. But He wanted me to do it the easy way. Where I would do right and I would go to seminary and do things proper. But I wouldn't do that. I chose the hard way, and so here I am. So it's working out.
And what should we all learn from the life of Bruce Davis?
Well, one thing you can learn is the wages of sin is death. That should be the negative lesson. You will reap what you sow, even if you don't think you're sowing it. It can come back bigger than you put it in, faster, and you cannot afford it. You need to learn that. The other part, the good part you can learn is that through the grace of Christ, you can have eternity on the right side of God and a meaningful life on earth. Have meaning and significance in your life and the fulfillment that you desire that's in harmony with real reality. That's what I hope I'm learning. All right? So maybe other people can learn. I hope they learn that too. And I believe by the power of God that what is being said here will change the lives